Alex was the first to move. He killed the engine, slid off his bike, and approached the girl the way you'd approach a wounded animal. Slow, hands visible, voice barely above a whisper. Hey, sweetheart, he said, squatting down so he wouldn't tower over her. We're not here to hurt you, okay? Are you lost? The girl didn't step back. She didn't flinch. She just stayed up at him with a face that looked far too old for her age. It hurts, she whispered. Down there. Jonah joined them, pulling off his helmet. His brows tightened. He glanced at Alex, that silent adult-to-adult exchange when something is terribly wrong. Did someone hurt you? Jonah asked softly. The girl's lips quivered, but she didn't answer. Instead, she tried to adjust her stance and winced, clutching the hem of her skirt. Alex swallowed hard. What's your name, sweetheart? Ava. Okay, Ava, he said gently. Can you tell us where your parents are? She shook her head. Did you run away? Another shake. A cold wind blew across the road, rustling leaves and brushing through her hair. Alex noticed her shoes, mismatched, one pink, one blue, both too small. Her knees were scraped as if she'd fallen or been dragged. Jonah noticed the faint purple bruise forming at the base of her thigh. This isn't right, he murmured. Ava hugged her backpack tighter. My uncle said not to talk to anyone, that nobody would believe me. There it was, the sentence that chilled both men to the bone. Alex breathed in sharply. Ava, did your uncle do something to you? She stayed at the ground. Can you help me? She whispered. Those words alone were enough. Jonah grabbed his phone, already dialing emergency services. But Ava panicked. No, if he sees police, he'll be mad. He said she stopped herself, breath shaking. Alex placed his hands gently on her shoulders. Ava, nothing that man threatened you with is stronger than the help you deserve. You're safe with us, okay? This ends tonight. Ava's tiny shoulders rose and fell as she tried to catch her breath, every inhale sharp like it hurt her chest. When she finally looked up, her eyes weren't just scared, they were pleading. Something about the way she stood, knees apart, barely holding herself, tore at both men in a way they couldn't describe. Neither needed more answers. They knew enough. Jonah slipped his jacket off and wrapped it around her trembling frame. She clung to it like lifeline. Come on, Jonah said softly. We're taking you to the hospital. No, she cried again, voice strained. I can't go back inside a car with a man. Alex didn't hesitate. He crouched a little lower and opened his arms. You don't have to go in a car, he said. I can carry you. Would that feel safer? She hesitated, then nodded once. Very carefully, Alex scooped her into his arms as though she were fragile glass, holding her close but not tight. She tucked her head against his shoulder, tiny fingers gripping his vest. Jonah held the bike steady while Alex climbed behind him, positioning Ava securely. We'll go slow, Jonah said, voice firm but gentle. Ava whispered, thank you. The engines rumbled to life, but softly, controlled, as the two bikers rode into town, carrying a little girl who had survived far too much for any child. If you were standing there in that moment, seeing that child look up with those terrified eyes, what would you have done? Tell me honestly in the comments. And if you don't have the words, just tap like. Sometimes it's the quiet gestures that show compassion still matters. As they reached the hospital entrance, Ava's grip tightened around Alex's neck. Automatic doors slid open, releasing a flood of warm white light that spilled onto the pavement. Nurses looked up immediately, a man walking in with a shaking child wrapped in leather and denim tends to draw attention. Ava hid her face in his chest. You okay? Alex whispered. We're right here. A nurse rushed forward. What happened? Ava's trembling fingers pointed at her bruised legs. Please, Alex said, voice tight. Just help her. The nurse nodded and motioned for them to follow. Ava didn't let go of Alex. For the first time, she refused to walk on her own. And as they moved down the hallway, the bikers realized something they hadn't expected. They were no longer just two strangers who stopped on the road. They were the only safe place this little girl had left. Ava whispered something again, voice fading. Is he going to find me? Alex didn't answer immediately. He just held her a little closer, as the nurse led them toward a room with a dim light and a soft bed. The nurse guided them into a quiet examination room. Soft yellow light glowed above the bed, giving the space a gentleness the rest of the hospital lacked. Alex lowered himself carefully, still holding Ava so she wouldn't have to sit alone. She clung to him with small, frantic fingers, as though letting go might drop her back into the nightmare she came from. An older nurse with kind eyes stepped in. "Sweetheart," she whispered, kneeling so she was face to face with Ava. "I'm going to help you feel better. Nothing will happen without your permission, okay?" Ava nodded, but she didn't lift her head from Alex's chest. "Do you want him to stay with you?" Another nod. A tighter grip. Jonas stood near the door, fists clenched at his sides. He wasn't the crying type, not even at funerals, but watching this little girl shaking in Alex's arms twisted something deep inside him. He kept replaying her whisper from the roadside. "I can't close my legs." Every time those words echoed, his jaw tightened. A doctor arrived, calm voice, careful steps. "Ava," he said gently, "I'm going to help your legs stop hurting. But before anything, I need to ask you a few questions." Her breath hitched. Alex leaned in, pressing his cheek lightly to her hair. "You don't have to be scared. You're safe, remember." Her voice came out small. He said if I tell, he'll come find me." Jonas stepped closer, shaking his head. "Not while we're breathing, he won't." The doctor sat on the stool. "Ava, do you know your uncle's name?" Her hands trembled. She whispered the name, a name that made both men still. The doctor nodded slowly. "Thank you. That helps us protect you." As the staff prepared equipment, Ava finally loosened her grip just enough for the nurse to gently examine her injuries. She winced, gasping in pain. Alex rubbed her back in slow circles, grounding her. It's okay, kiddo. You're doing so good," he murmured. Jonah turned away for a moment, wiping his forehead, but really he was trying to swallow the surge of fury rising inside him. He had a daughter. She was 6, the same age as Ava. That thought alone made his vision blur. The doctor finally spoke. "We'll treat her injuries and run tests. But the police will need a statement eventually. For now, let's focus on making sure she's safe and comfortable." Safe. Such a simple word. But for Ava, safety felt like a place she had never been allowed to enter. A soft knock broke the silence. A social worker stood at the doorway with a clipboard. Her voice gentle. "I'm here to help Ava through the next steps. But only when she's ready." Ava looked up, eyes glossy. "I want them to stay," she said, pointing to Alex and Jonah. The social worker nodded. "As long as the hospital allows, they can." Ava eased back slightly on the bed, but when Alex tried to move his arm away, her fingers clamped around his shirt again. Okay, he whispered, staying close. "I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, something shifted. Not just for Ava, but for the bikers too. They walked in as strangers, but life had a strange way of choosing who becomes family, even for a night. The nurse cleaned Ava's injuries gently, whispering reassurances. Each time Ava winced, Alex murmured soothing words. Each whimper felt like it landed directly in Jonah's chest. Ava's voice was barely audible. "Do you think my mom would be mad at me?" Alex frowned. Why would she be mad? "Because I didn't scream loud enough." The room froze. Alex leaned closer, shaking his head. "Ava, none of this is your fault. Not one part. You were brave just by surviving." Her lower lip quivered. "I tried to be good." "You were," Jonas said, voice thick. "You're the bravest little girl I've ever met." Ava's gaze softened at that, something warming behind the fear. A tiny glow in a place that had forgotten light. Have you ever had someone step into your life at the exact moment you needed help the most? If the answer is yes, type yes, and tell me their name. Maybe honoring them now lets gratitude travel further than we think. The doctor finished bandaging her carefully. "You're safe now, Ava. No one is going to touch you tonight except people trying to help." She let out a shaky exhale and sank back into the pillow. Alex slowly eased his arm away, giving her room to rest. But he stayed on the edge of the bed, close enough for her to reach if she needed. Jonah stepped outside for a breath. He leaned against the wall, gripping the edge of a drinking fountain, staring at the floor tiles. The air tasted stale, thick with disinfectant and memories he wished belonged to no child. He replayed the moment they found her, the trembling knees, the whisper, the fear. "What kind of monster?" he muttered under his breath. Alex stepped out moments later. "You okay?" "No," Jonah said honestly. "Are you?" Alex shook his head. "Then we stay until she doesn't shake anymore," Jonas said. "Deal. Deal." Back in the room, Ava dozed off for the first time. Tiny breaths, uneven but calmer. Her hand dangled off the bed, reaching slightly toward the space where Alex had been. He sat back down and gently held her hand so she wouldn't wake up afraid. Outside, the hallway lights dimmed to night mode. A slow hush filled the hospital. But inside that little room, something fragile yet strong was forming. A trust Ava hadn't felt in years. And just as Alex lowered his head, exhaustion tugging at him, Ava stirred, whispering half asleep. "Please don't leave. We're right here," he whispered back. He didn't know it yet, but those words would follow them far beyond this night, and into a truth the entire town had tried to ignore. Ava slept lightly, the kind of sleep that looked borrowed rather than given, fragile, uneven. Every few minutes her fingers twitched, as if she feared something might return the moment she loosened her grip on safety. Alex kept her hand gently cupped in his palm, unmoving. Jonah sat in the corner chair, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor but listening to every tiny sound the girl made. A soft beep sounded from the machine beside her bed. The lights were dim, turning the hospital room into a quiet cocoon of shadows and warmth. Outside, rain had begun to fall, tapping against the glass like someone knocking gently, asking the night for permission to stay. The social worker returned, walking in with small steps so she wouldn't wake Ava. "The police are downstairs," she whispered. "They want to speak to you both." Alex shook his head. "Not while she's awake. She'll panic." "They are willing to wait," she reassured. "But there's something else." Jonah straightened. "We ran her name through the system," she continued. "A missing child report was filed 2 months ago." Alex exhaled sharply. 2 months? That long? The social worker nodded. "Her mother has been searching everywhere. Posters, calls, door to door. She's been living in a nightmare." Jonah's breath caught. He imagined his own daughter gone for even a day. The terror he'd feel. 2 months. The thought alone made his chest tighten. "Is her mother here?" Alex asked. "She's on her way. She's coming from 3 cities over. We informed her the moment Ava arrived." A beat of silence passed. The weight of that moment, of a mother racing through the night to get to her child, hung thick in the room. "When will she get here?" Jonah asked. "A few hours," the social worker replied. "She told us she's driving through the storm. She refused to wait until morning." Back in the bed, Ava stirred in her sleep. Her small fingers squeezed around Alex's hand, and she whimpered, a soft, terrified sound that made both men freeze. Alex leaned in. "Sure, it's okay. You're safe. Nobody's going to hurt you." Ava quieted, settling again. Jonah rubbed his face, exhaustion creeping into his bones. "We need to talk to those cops soon," he muttered. "If her uncle knows she ran, he might look for her." "Is not getting near her," Alex said, eyes sharpened. "Not through us. Not through this hospital." Jonah nodded, jaw set. The social worker watched them with something like gratitude in her eyes. "You two saved her life tonight. Don't underestimate what you did." Neither answered. They didn't feel like heroes. They felt like 2 men who happened to be at the right place at the right time, and now were desperately trying to keep a child from breaking even more. A nurse opened the door lightly. "Sorry to interrupt, but I need to update you both." They stepped aside to let her speak quietly. The nurse glanced toward Ava before whispering. "The injuries, they're consistent with long-term trauma, but she's stable. No immediate danger. We'll continue treating her pain. She'll need specialists, counseling, a safe home. But physically, she'll heal." Emotion slammed into both men. Relief, sorrow, anger, all tangled together. Ava shifted again, brow furrowing. Then, slowly, her eyes fluttered open. Alex leaned closer. "Hey, you okay?" She blinked tiredly, voice a hoarse whisper. "Did I wake up again?" "You allowed to," he said softly. "You're safe." Ava looked around, gaze landing on Jonah. "You stayed too?" Jonah swallowed. "Of course I did." Something in her expression softened, a tiny sliver of trust taking root where fear had been living for far too long. "Can I have water?" she asked. Jonah poured some and held the cup, letting her sip through a straw. Her small hands shook as she drank. "Is my mom mad at me?" she asked suddenly, wiping her mouth. Alex shook his head. "Your mom has been looking everywhere for you. She's on her way right now." Ava froze. Her breath hitched. She is." "Yes," Jonas said. "She's been trying to find you this whole time." Ava pressed a hand over her mouth as tears filled her eyes, not from fear, but something else. A feeling she probably hadn't felt since the day she disappeared. "Hope." Her voice cracked. "Will she come tonight?" "She's driving right now," Alex said, brushing a tear from her cheek. "She wants to see you as soon as she can." Ava closed her eyes, a tear rolling down her temple. "I thought she forgot me." Alex's chest tightened. She never stopped looking. Moments later, while Ava rested again, the Nace dimmed the lights further. Outside, the storm thickened. Inside, a quiet miracle was already unfolding. "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might be the sign someone scrolling tonight needs to feel less alone." Ava's breathing steadied as the room held its fragile peace. But peace in a night like this never lasted long. Down the hall, the elevator doors opened. Boot stepped out. A woman's voice cried, "Where's my daughter?" The storm outside had followed her in, not with rain, but with a mother's fear sharpened into raw urgency. And in moments, everything would change. The doors at the end of the hallway burst open as a woman rushed through, soaked from the rain, hair clinging to her cheeks. Her breath came sharp, uneven, the kind of breathing that only comes from 2 months of terror, from nights spent praying into pillows, from pleading with strangers for information that never came. "Ava," she cried, voice cracking against the sterile walls. "Please, someone tell me where my daughter is." Nurses tried to guide her gently, but she shook them off and stumbled forward, looking into every open room, gripping the edges of door frames like she needed the world itself to hold her up. Alex stepped out first. When she saw him, a tall man in a leather vest, jaw set, eyes tired, she froze. Are you the one who found her?" she whispered. Alex nodded slowly. The mother's face collapsed. She covered her mouth with both hands, sobbing in a way that made even the nurses lower their eyes. Jonah stepped beside Alex. "She's safe," he said gently. "She's in here. She's been asking for you." The mother's knees buckled for a moment, but she caught herself on the wall, wiping her tears with shaking fingers. "Please, take me to her." Alex led her into the dim room. Ava stirred as the door opened. Her eyes fluttered, confused at first, then widening as she recognized the silhouette in the doorway. "Mom!" The woman gasped as if the air had been punched from her lungs. She rushed forward, falling to her knees beside the bed, gathering Ava so carefully it looked like she feared the girl might break in her arms. Ava, baby, I'm here," she cried, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her hair. "I'm here. I never stopped looking. I never stopped." Ava sobbed into her mother's chest, clinging to her shirt with trembling fingers. I thought you forgot. You said you didn't want me." Her mother shook her head violently. "Never. Oh God, never. You are everything to me. You hear me? Everything." Ava cried harder, burying herself deeper into the warmth she'd been ripped away from for so long. The room was silent except for their sobs, the sound of pain finally meeting safety, the sound of months of fear dissolving all at once. Jonah turned away, wiping at the corner of his eye. He didn't even pretend he wasn't crying. Alex just stayed at the floor, jaw tight, fighting to steady his breath. "I'm sorry," Ava whispered through tears. I tried to be brave. You were, her mother said, pressing her forehead against Ava's. You were so brave. I'm the one who's sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't find you sooner. Alex cleared his throat softly. She fought so hard to get away. She's stronger than she knows. Ava's mother looked up at him, really looked, and something like gratitude broke through her sorrow. Thank you. You and your friend. Thank you for bringing her back to me. Alex nodded once, emotion thick in his throat. We just did what anyone should do. No, she whispered, shaking her head. Not anyone would have stopped. Not anyone would have listened. Ava held onto her mother so tightly her knuckles went white. When you heard what just happened, if it struck something deep inside you, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes a single symbol speaks louder than anything we can say. The doctor stepped in quietly, allowing the reunion its space. We'll need to run a few more tests, and we'll need your statement. But for now, you can stay with Ava as long as you want. Her mother nodded, not letting go even for a second. Her fingers ran through Ava's hair in tender, trembling strokes, as if trying to erase every cruel touch that had ever landed there. Jonah stepped closer to Alex and whispered, She's safe now. Really safe. Alex nodded, though he didn't move from where he stood. He felt rooted in place, protective, watchful, as though the danger wasn't fully gone yet. Ava peeked up from her mother's arms. Can they stay? She asked, pointing toward the bikers. Her mother cupped her cheek, then looked at the men. If they want to. We'll stay, Alex said softly, as long as she needs. Ava gave the smallest smile, weak, trembling, but real. Her mother brushed away her tears. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. You held on. You came back to me. Ava leaned against her again, exhaustion pulling at her eyelids. I was scared, every day. I know, baby, her mother murmured, pressing her lips gently to her forehead. But you're not alone anymore. You're home now. A nurse returned with paperwork for the mother to sign, speaking quietly so Ava wouldn't be startled. She explained the next steps: counseling, rest, legal action, protection orders. But Ava wasn't listening. She was drifting in and out of sleep, safe in the arms she had ached for in her darkest hours. Outside, the storm eased to a soft drizzle. The hospital hallway glowed faintly from the night lights. And inside that small room, something indescribable filled the air, a fragile blend of relief, grief, and the slow beginning of healing. Ava whispered one last question before sleep finally claimed her. Is he gone? Her mother didn't hesitate. Yes, she breathed. And he can never hurt you again. For the first time since they'd met her, Ava closed her eyes without fear. For the next hour, the room felt suspended in a quiet, fragile peace. Ava slept in her mother's arms, her breathing small and uneven but no longer frantic. The rain outside softened to a gentle whisper against the windows, like the storm had exhausted itself too. Alex stepped out to speak with the officers waiting in the hall. Jonah followed, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. The officers stood near the nurse's station, their expressions grave. You're the ones who brought her in? One asked. Alex nodded. Found her on the service road. Alone. Injured. Scared out of her mind. The officer sighed. We've been looking for that man since the report came in. Her mother described him as unstable, unpredictable. She feared he might run. He did worse than that, Jonah muttered. He hit her. The officer nodded grimly. We'll need everything the girl told you, even the small details. Alex hesitated, glancing back toward the room. She's been through enough tonight. Give her some time. We will, the officer said. But we can't delay for too long. If he suspects she got away, he may try to leave the state. Jonah stepped forward. Then tell us what we can do. Stay here for now. She seems to trust you. If she wakes up and feels safe, she may talk more. Alex agreed silently. He wasn't leaving until this child's fear had somewhere else to go. When they returned to the room, Ava was awake again, but quieter now, her voice small as she whispered to her mother about memories that made the woman's face crumple. He said you didn't want me, Ava murmured. He said if you really loved me, you wouldn't have let me go. Her mother's tears fell softly onto the blanket. Baby, I never let you go. He took you from me. There is a difference. A huge one. Ava looked down at her hands. Her fingers picked nervously at the edge of the blanket. But what if I did something bad? You didn't, her mother said firmly. You did nothing wrong. Alex stepped closer, crouching near the bed. Your mom's right, Ava. What happened to you was because of him, not you. Ava stayed at him for a long, quiet moment. But I didn't scream. You were a child facing a monster, Alex said gently. And children shouldn't ever be expected to fight monsters alone. Ava blinked rapidly, tears catching at her lashes. Jonah leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You survived. That's enough. More than enough. The softness in his voice made Ava look his way. Something in her expression shifted, as if she'd been carrying guilt heavy enough to crack her small shoulders, and now, maybe she didn't have to hold all of it by herself. Her mother kissed her forehead again and again, whispering that word she had repeated the whole night. Safe. You're safe now. Safe. Ava nodded slowly, breathing a shaky sigh. A nurse entered quietly with a tray. We need to give her some medication for the pain, she explained. Does it hurt? Alex asked softly. Ava hesitated, then nodded. Her mother held her hand as the nurse prepared the syringe. This will help you rest, the nurse soothed. Ava watched, fear rising again, but she didn't pull away. She squeezed her mother's fingers and whispered, Promise you won't leave. I promise, her mother said, voice trembling with truth. Jonah stepped outside again, pacing the hallway. The storm had left the sky bruised and dim outside the windows. He took a deep breath, trying to chase away the anger that kept clawing at his throat. Alex walked out after him. You okay? No, Jonah admitted. Part of me wants to go after that bastard myself. Alex leaned on the wall beside him. I know. But then I see her, that little kid, trying so hard to pretend she's not scared. Jonah shook his head. Alex, what kind of forgiveness does a world like this even deserve? Alex exhaled slowly. I don't know. Maybe forgiveness isn't what tonight is about. Maybe tonight is just about keeping her safe. Jonah rubbed his face. Yeah. But someday, she'll have to decide if she forgives him or not. And God knows that'll be the hardest choice she ever makes. Be honest. After everything she's endured, could you forgive someone who did this? Type forgive if you think you could. Or never if the pain would be too deep to heal. Back in the room, Ava had fallen asleep again. Her breathing was softer now, her tiny hand still wrapped around her mother's. The medication eased her pain, but exhaustion kept her heavy and quiet. Her mother brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead, whispering prayers under her breath. She didn't notice Alex and Jonah returned. She was too lost in gratitude and grief. When she finally looked up, her voice was hushed. She keeps asking if I'm disappointed in her, if I'm angry, if I blame her. No child should ever carry that, Alex said, shaking his head. Her mother covered her face, shoulders shaking. She's been hurting for so long, and all that time, she thought it was her fault. Jonah stepped closer, his voice gentle. Then you show her every day that she's loved. Every second. That's how she heals. Her mother looked at them, these two strangers who were now something more. You're good men, she whispered. Alex looked away. Just men who were in the right place. No, she said softly. Men who chose to care. She returned her focus to her daughter, smoothing the blanket around her. A nurse peeked in. We're arranging a private room for security, she said. We don't want anyone near her without clearance. Her mother nodded. Thank you. The nurse left. And then, as if summoned by the weight of the moment, Ava stirred in her sleep, whispering a word that made all three adults go still. Uncle. Her mother froze, breath caught in her throat. Alex stepped closer. Jonah's jaw hardened. Mom, he's coming. Her voice trembled, and then the hospital doors downstairs opened. Ava's mother stiffened, her breath caught halfway in her throat. She stared at her daughter's trembling lips, those fragile whispers slipping out from whatever nightmare still clung to her mind. Mom, he's coming. Alex immediately stepped toward the doorway. Jonah did the same, but with a darker fire in his eyes. The air in the room thickened, the kind of heavy silence that presses against your ribs, making it hard to breathe. Ava's mother gently brushed the girl's cheek. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "you're just dreaming. I'm right here. You're safe." But the whisper in the hall, a low murmur of voices, the shift of movement at the nurse's station, made Alex's entire body tense. Someone had arrived downstairs. "Stay with her," Alex told the mother softly. "No matter what." She nodded, clutching Ava a little closer. Jonah pushed open the door and stepped into the dim hallway. Nurses were gathering, whispering urgently. The officers they'd spoken with earlier were at the end of the corridor, talking to someone the bikers couldn't see. "Who showed up?" Jonah asked, voice steady but sharp. A nurse turned, eyes wide. "They said it's a relative." Jonah's blood chilled. "Describe him." "Tall, scruffy beard, brown jacket." Jonah didn't wait for the rest. He strode forward, boots thudding against the tiles. Alex caught up instantly, both of them moving with the same instinct, protect. As they neared the corner, the voices grew clearer. "I just want to see her," a man insisted, trying to force calm into his tone. But underneath it, something feral simmered. One of the officers blocked his way. "So, you were instructed to remain away from the family. There's an active investigation." "She's my niece," the man argued. "I need to make sure she's okay. Her mother asked me to come." "Lie. A practice one." Alex stepped forward, his presence solid as stone. The man turned at the sound of footsteps, and the instant Alex saw his eyes, two things became unmistakably clear. This was the uncle, and he was not here to help. The man's gaze flicked over the bikers, landing on Jonah next. A twitch of recognition crossed his face, the faint, bitter curl of someone who had lost control of a victim and now wanted to reclaim it. "You," the man hissed. "You're the ones who took her." Jonah didn't blink. "We got her away from you." Officers moved quickly between them. "Gentlemen, step back. We have this under control." But the uncle lunged forward anyway, pointing a trembling finger at Alex. "She's lying," he snapped. The girl's confused. "You don't know what she's been through. I raised her." "Me? You don't get to walk in and—" "Enough," an officer barked, grabbing the man's arm. The uncle jerked back violently, knocking over a tray of medical supplies. Metal clattered across the floor. Nurses gasped. A child down the hall began crying from the noise. His mask dropped. His rage surfaced. Everyone saw it. "You don't understand," he shouted. "She needs me." "No," Alex said, stepping forward, voice a low, controlled thunder. "What she needs is to never see you again." The man tried to shove past the officer, voice rising. "Let me go. I need to talk to her." "You're not going anywhere near her," Jonas said. "Not tonight. Not ever." The officers moved fast then, pitting the man against the wall, forcing his arms behind his back. He fought, snarling, spitting, thrashing like an animal caught in its own trap. "Let me go," he screamed again. "You're under arrest," the officer said sternly, "for kidnapping and aggravated assault of a minor." The words echoed down the hall. A nurse covered her mouth. Another whispered a prayer. Jonah exhaled shakily, fists still clenched, knuckles white. Alex didn't move. He stayed at the man with a steady, unblinking focus, a look that said everything he wanted to do, everything he knew he couldn't. Then the uncle was dragged away, still screaming, still spewing lies that no one listened to anymore. As the elevator doors closed, the hallway fell quiet, almost too quiet. Relief, shock, exhaustion, all of it hung suspended in the stillness. A nurse approached Alex carefully. "You two handled yourselves better than most." "Thank you." Alex nodded once. He didn't trust himself to speak. Jonah finally met his eyes. "It's over," he whispered. But Alex shook his head. "Not for her. Not yet." They turned back toward the room. Inside, Ava stirred again, her small voice catching on another nightmare. Her mother soothed her instantly, whispering warmth back into her ear. Alex approached slowly. Ava opened her eyes, dazed. Was the banging him? Her mother kissed her forehead. "No, baby. He's gone. The police took him." Ava blinked, tears welling. Really? Really? Jonah said softly, stepping closer. Is not coming back. Ava sank against her mother, trembling. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was the slow, overwhelming release of a burden too big for her tiny shoulders. If you believe love still wins, even after nights like this, type Amen. Let this part of the story be flooded with hope. Someone else reading might need that reminder more than you know. Ava's mother wiped her daughter's tears and looked toward the bikers with deep, quiet gratitude. You stayed, she whispered. We promised, Alex said. And for the first time, a small spark of peace glowed in that hospital room. Gentle, fragile, but finally real. For a long while, none of them spoke. The hallway felt strangely hollow after the officers dragged the uncle away, as if the building itself exhaled after holding its breath too tightly. Inside the dim room, the soft hum of hospital machines filled the quiet, steady and gentle, a rhythm so unlike the chaos that had erupted moments before. Ava curled closer into her mother's side, exhaustion pulling at every tiny muscle in her body. Her mother stroked her hair slowly, whispering words only a child in pain could hear clearly. Words meant to stitch together what had been torn apart. Alex stood near the door, arms folded, but his stance was softer now. Not relaxed, but watchful. Protective. Jonas sat in the chair again, rubbing his palms against his jeans as if grounding himself back in the moment. Ava blinked groggily. Is he really gone? She asked again, voice cracking. Her mother pressed her forehead against Ava's. Yes, sweetheart. He won't touch you ever again. You're safe. Completely safe. Ava's tears came in quiet waves this time. Silent, fragile sobs that trembled through her small body. Not fear, not panic, just the release of a truth she desperately wanted to believe. Jonas swallowed hard, fighting the tremor rising in his throat. He'd seen many kids cry before. His daughter had cried over dark rooms, scraped knees, thunderstorms, but nothing compared to this. Nothing compared to a child crying because she'd finally learned she wasn't trapped anymore. A nurse stepped in carefully. We're ready to move her to the private room now, she whispered. Whenever she's comfortable. Ava tensed. Her mother whispered, it's okay. We'll all go with you. Ava looked at Alex and Jonah. Will you come too? Alex nodded instantly. We're right behind you. Jonah gave a gentle smile. We're not leaving, kiddo. Relief softened Ava's trembling shoulders. The nurse brought in a wheelchair with soft blankets piled on the seat. Ava's mother lifted her carefully, wincing when the girl whimpered from the movement. But once Ava settled into the blankets, she sighed, leaning back into her mother's arms. The small group made their way through the dim corridor. The storm outside had faded completely now, leaving only the glistening reflections of streetlights on wet pavement. The hospital night lights glowed warm against the polished floors, casting gentle halos around each doorway they passed. As they entered the private room, Ava glanced around nervously. The walls were painted a soft blue. A tiny lamp glowed near the bed. A small table held a box of tissues and a teddy bear someone had placed there, likely a quiet gesture from a nurse who understood what children needed most on nights like this. Ava's mother carried her to the bed and settled beside her. This will be our room tonight, she whispered, smoothing the sheets. Just us. And us, Ava added quietly, looking at the bikers. Jonah chuckled under his breath. And us, if you want. I want, Ava said quickly, fear flickering in her eyes. Please don't leave yet. We won't, Alex said. Not tonight. Ava nodded softly, finally allowing herself to sink into the pillow. Her mother wiped her cheeks with the corner of the blanket. You're safe now, my love. Completely safe. Ava's eyes fluttered as she whispered. But what if I have bad dreams? We'll wake you, her mother soothed. We'll be right here. Jonah stepped closer. And if you're still scared, you can call for us. We'll come in a heartbeat. Ava stared at him for a long second, then whispered, Thank you. Alex's voice softened. You're welcome, sweetheart. A nurse dimmed the lights, leaving just enough glow to keep the shadows from feeling scary. Ava's mother leaned against the headboard, holding her daughter's hand. The bikers sat nearby, one in a chair, the other against the wall, like quiet guardians. Minutes passed. Peace settled gently. Ava's eyes drooped, half-lidded. Her breathing slowed. Then, almost inaudibly, she whispered, "I didn't think anyone would find me." Alex shook his head. "We were always going to find you. The world wasn't done with you yet." Ava's mother smiled, weak but full of gratitude. "You saved her," she whispered. "I'll never forget that." Jonah looked down, eyes stinging. "She saved herself too. Don't forget that." Silence wrapped around the room again, warm this time, not hollow. The kind of silence that comes after people who are strangers become something like family. If this story touched you, don't just scroll past quietly. Tap like not for the story, but for the little girl who endured what no child ever should, yet still managed to hold on. One simple click can be your way of saying, "I'm here. I feel this." And children like her deserve the whole world's protection. Ava drifted into sleep, her breathing finally steady. And just when it seemed the night had given them their first moment of calm, a soft knock sounded on the door. Not frantic, not alarming, but steady, purposeful. Her mother's fingers tightened slightly around Ava's. Alex straightened. Jonah stood. The door slowly opened. The door creaked open slowly, letting in a sliver of warm hallway light. Everyone in the room turned at once. Ava's mother tightening her arm protectively around her daughter, Jonah stepping forward like a shield, Alex straightening with quiet readiness. But the figure that stepped inside wasn't a threat. It was the same nurse from earlier, older, gentle-eyed, holding a clipboard against her chest. Her expression carried none of the tension buzzing through the room. Instead, she wore a soft, almost maternal calm. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she whispered, closing the door behind her. "I just needed to check on her one last time tonight." Ava stirred but didn't wake. Her small hand twitched in her mother's. The nurse approached slowly, her footsteps barely brushing the floor. She checked Ava's temperature, adjusted her blanket, then looked up at her mother. "She's exhausted," the nurse said softly. "It'll take time for her body and mind to recognize she's truly safe. But this," she glanced around the room, "this is the best place she could be right now." Her mother nodded, brushing a thumb gently across Ava's cheek. "I'll stay awake all night if I have to." "You won't be alone," Alex murmured from across the room. The nurse looked at the bikers, eyes softening. "You two, you changed this child's story tonight. I hope you know that." Jonah rubbed the back of his neck. "We just did what anyone should." The nurse smiled sadly. "If everyone did what they should, half the children I meet would never have suffered in the first place." A quiet sadness filled the room. She finished her checks and stepped back. "Call me if you wake scared, or even if you just need someone to sit with you." Ava's mother nodded gratefully. When the door closed again with a gentle click, the room settled back into its fragile stillness. Rainwater still dripped from the eaves outside, ticking rhythmically against the window, but the storm had moved on. The worst was behind them. Ava slept peacefully, her fingers now loose around the blanket instead of clenched with fear. Her breathing soft and even. Her mother watched her like parents do when they've nearly lost the most precious part of their world. Jonah shifted, lowering himself into the chair again. "She looks lighter," he whispered, "like something let go." Alex nodded. "Fear does that. It takes root, but once it knows it can't stay, it begins to fade." Her mother wiped another tear before it could fall. "Will she ever forget?" she whispered. Alex shook his head gently. "Probably not. But forgetting isn't the goal. Healing is. And she has a chance at that now." Jonah pointed at Ava's small hand resting on the blanket. "And she's not alone in it. Not anymore." Ava stirred again, eyelids fluttering. This time, the dream didn't seem dark. Her face softened instead of tightening. She murmured something too soft to hear, then relaxed. Her mother let out a breath that trembled with both relief and aching love. "Do you think she'll ever feel normal again?" she asked. Jonah spoke first. "Normal?" He shook his head. "She'll feel stronger than normal. Kids like her, they build whole worlds inside themselves just to survive. And someday, when she's older, she'll realize that makes her powerful." Alex added quietly, "She'll grow. She'll heal. and she'll become someone who refuses to let darkness win. A long silence filled the room. A good one this time, warm and full of something that felt like the first whisper of dawn after a long night. Her mother pressed her lips to Ava's forehead and whispered, "I'm going to give you the life you deserved from the start." If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the little girl who carried this pain and still held on. One small click becomes your way of saying, "I felt this, and she deserved better." And maybe, just maybe, someone scrolling right now needs that reminder of empathy more than anything. Ava shifted again, nestling closer. Her mother held her tight. Jonah leaned his head back against the wall, closing his eyes with a deep exhale, the kind you release only after witnessing something break, then slowly begin to mend. Alex looked out the window. The sky was clearing. Not bright yet, but the darkness was lifting. The first hint of blue stretched across the horizon. "That's a good sign," he murmured. Jonah opened an eye. "What is?" "The night's ending." Jonah nodded. "Yeah, for all of us." Ava's mother smiled faintly through her tears. "Thank you," she whispered, voice breaking with gratitude. "For stopping. For listening. For not turning away." Alex's eyes softened. No one should ever turn away from a child in pain. And no child, Jonah added, looking at the girl, should ever have to whisper what she whispered. Her mother nodded, her tears falling into Ava's hair. She won't ever have to again. For a moment, everything stilled, the room holding its breath around the promise made to a child already dreaming of safer tomorrows. Ava's chest rose and fell gently. Her mother's arms wrapped around her. The bikers stood watch. Outside, dawn crept closer, washing the horizon with the first shy blush of morning. And somewhere in the quiet, in the soft glow settling over the bed, a wounded little girl finally slept in peace, knowing she had a future again. Moral: sometimes the smallest whisper can reveal the deepest wounds, and sometimes a stranger's pause, a stranger's kindness, becomes the moment that saves a life. Healing doesn't begin with forgetting. It begins when someone finally listens, finally believes, and finally stays.